everyone. Just waiting for Danneel, and then we'll get started. Hi. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, trying to get Danneel on. Hi, everyone. Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh. Having technical difficulties. Let's try this again. Hi, hi.
I think we did it.
We did it!
Yes. I'm sitting here laughing. I was like, I don't want to be one of those people who doesn't know how to work their Instagram, but I am that person.
Listen, you're doing great.
I'm a whole decade older than you, so.
She's not a millennial.
I'm not a millennial. No.
You are.
No, I can't. What am I? Generation Y? Xers.
I refuse to accept that our 10-year, no. You're a millennial, you're young at heart, all the things.
It's fine. We're birthday buddies.
We are birthday buddies.
Everybody knows that. We're birthday sisters, so.
We have the exact same birthday, 10 years, which
What time were you born? Do you know?
8/13.
Oh, you were?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 8:04 or something like that. In the morning, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I wonder if our planets are aligned. Something's going on.
We'll do a full chart reading next time we're together.
Yeah. Our next talk is about our horoscopes and our interplanetary interconnectedness. Yes. Anyway, should we start? What time is it? Oh yeah, we're 1 minute.
It's 6:01. We're on time.
Okay, hi everybody. The scrolling thing is gonna really distract me because I'm gonna read it. Anyway, it's part of my crazy brain. Okay, so for those of you who maybe don't know Bree, which would be crazy, everyone should know her. She's fabulous. We have been friends for like when we were talking about it, it's like 2018, but it feels like a lot longer, probably because of our interconnected planetary things that we were talking about earlier. But we met in 2018 by another one of my sister friends, Jen Padalecki, that I'm sure a lot of people on here know. She was actually doing some work for Out Youth, and Bree, you were also working with Out Youth, and you guys needed a beer sponsor, I think. So
yep.
You called me because my husband and I have a brewery, and we were like, of course we'll give you beer, but what else can we do together? And that's kind of how we came up with that Soul Cycle ride, which is really fun. And again, a lot of people that are commenting, I know you guys helped us raise tons of money for Out Youth, and they're awesome. So that was a good time. And it's just been fun watching you grow and all the things that you're doing because you're so dynamic.
Gosh, thank
you. Yeah. Yeah, and then a lot of you might remember Bree from the talk we did with Misha. That was about racial injustice, and that was 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had, I feel like I called you because you were again threatening to leave us in Austin, and I was like, no, come do this talk, and you had just changed jobs. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it's kind of what it is, I think.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always threatening to leave, and every time I say, tell me I can't leave, so here I am. Just almost 6 years I've been in Austin now. But yeah, no, I was at a tech company and lost my job, and you called me that week. And I wasn't, like, I hadn't started my company yet, and you were just like, hi, I was talking to Misha. We have a bunch of other really fantastic Black activists. I bought up you. He wants you. So we'll see you in like 2 days. And I was like, okay, sounds great. Like, it was more like I was voluntold, and I feel like I couldn't say no. So it was truly such a joy, and like everything, my company, me as a person, just kind of all like grew from that event. And then we had the second one after one. So yeah.
And so for everybody, Bree is full-time DEI consulting now, and she's trying to grow her company. And that was part of this, it's Black History Month, and she and I were talking, and I was like, let's maybe do something on Instagram Live. I'm terrible at Instagram, so however this goes, I'm sorry. But we thought let's show what Bree's doing, and maybe some of you out there have a company that you might want her to talk at, or you can maybe tell your bosses, whatever it is. But she's fabulous, and I just she always has really insightful things to say, and you're very good at civil discourse, and I think that's something we all need to be good at. We all need to learn to get uncomfortable and be able to talk about things, because it's how you move forward, so yeah, if you want to just jump in, because I think Instagram cuts us off at like an
hour. Yeah, it's like
gave a couple minutes at the end for some questions too. So yeah,
I really, that like civil discourse thing is like the main part of my business. I tell people like it's not my job to persuade you, I just want to give you perspective. And so when you and I were talking about doing a sort of like refresher of like how to like turn your intentions into impact, and like how to be a better ally and be a better like activist, is all like made sense. So let's have a lot to cover tonight. Like Danneel said, we're going to save space for questions. But it's just like a lot of overarching refresher stuff that I wanted to touch on. I have notes here, so if I'm not looking at you, that's why. You know me, very organized person. I had to like have it all planned out. But so the real reason we picked this was because I feel like over the last few years, so many people have had the intention to be a better ally, but don't know where to start. A lot of people are afraid to get things wrong. They're afraid they're gonna offend people. You and I have talked about like people who call me. I'm like, you're the only person who I know who to ask. And so I have just felt like, because I do have this sort of platform and space that people feel comfortable talking to me, I'm like, let's just bring it to the masses. So that's kind of where this title came.
And if we run out of time, we can add on another day. We can do this again. I love talking to you. You just like one of those people that just makes me smile.
Now I'm like distracted. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. But yeah, so I always like to start out these trainings with sort of like this brave space decree, and just saying like, I as an activist never feel like I have the right to tell people if a space is safe. And so I want to invite everyone in this space to be brave. You are able to show up as authentically as you want. You're able to get as uncomfortable as you want. It is okay to ask questions and get things wrong, but I'm going to be sharing a lot of like my personal experiences, professional, lived experience, so that way it kind of gives perspective to people. It's a learning conversation. So here we go. There's some terms I want to go over, just kind of like overarching terms to begin. Allyship, because it's been like the biggest one this year or the last couple of years, and it's any person or group associated with having a common purpose to help another person. So like, for example, if you're an ally to the Black community, you might be supporting Black Lives Matter. If you're an ally to people who have survived sexual abuse or harassment, you might be an ally to the Me Too movement. So just you're connecting to another issue that may not affect you directly, but that you want people to feel better about.
Yeah.
Implicit bias refers to the brain's automatic instant association of stereotypes, in particular to specific types of groups of people. So for example, if a Latino student raises his hand in class, speaks perfect English, and the teacher is almost surprised by it, her implicit bias is that his first language wasn't English, that he should have an accent. So that's kind of like that implicit bias, like this kind of like internalized stereotype that, quote, doesn't do harm, but really just makes you take a step back and like, oh, okay, that's something I need to unpack for myself. Like, why was that association that I had?
Yeah, I think that one is a really good one, Brie, because we have that. And some people are really just, it's like, oh, no, not me. I'm perfect. I never think that. And we have talked on the phone. I've shared experiences with you. And I think one of the first steps is going, yeah, I do think that. Let's figure out why I think that, and not be scared to admit it, when those things do come up. And just when they come up, you register, you take it in, and you figure out why is that in my brain, and how can I figure out how to get it out and turn it around? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's an important one, and one
And
people talk about all the time.
yeah, and that's the thing, like you don't necessarily have to feel bad about it, right? Like it's just a self-check that I think a lot of people need to do, because it's like I can't be racist or homophobic and all the other things, but there's so much stuff baked into us because of societal ideas or societal pressures that we're just like, oh crap, like that is actually something that I do and think about for
Right.
sure. Another one is microaggressions. I have a really hard one with microaggressions because I feel like it minimizes the impact of it. Um, so, microaggression is a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group. And so for me, it's like death by a thousand paper cuts. You know, I identify as a Black queer woman, so I have to deal with homophobic, racist, misogynistic things, and so it's like if that's all I experience all day, it's just like overwhelming and just something I never kind of get to leave alone.
Yeah.
Some of this can look like, you know, the whole like don't touch a Black person's hair without permission. Some of them are environmental, like you go into a therapist office and all you see is white therapists. So the microaggression there is like, well, do you not think that Black people would want a therapist who like themselves? So it's just all these sort of like things that you really don't think about that can be so impactful to other groups.
Right.
And then the last one is systemic or institutional racism, which is a form of racism embedded into laws and regulations of a society or organization. For me, I always think about the school to prison pipeline when I think about systemic racism, specifically that Black girls are 7 times more likely to get suspended than their white peers. And that can be for the same thing. Like if one little Black girl and one little white girl literally yell and scream in class, a Black girl is 7 times more likely to get indoor suspension or suspension period than the white girl. And that just perpetuates the system of like imprisoning Black people as a way of like, quote, putting them in their place.
Right.
So those are the terms. And then I have like some sections built out. So yeah. But the first one with allyship is like over the last few years, we've seen an uptick, obviously, on like Black Lives Matter and, you know, Stop Asian Hate and all this other stuff of like people coming forward and like, I want to be a better ally, I want to learn more. But then on the other side, I've really seen people who are just not really getting it. Like they mean well and the intention is there, but at the same time, it's like kind of making things worse in a way. So the first example I thought of was ally fatigue, which you and I talked about yesterday.
I was like, wait, what? Because this is something I hadn't heard of, and then when you explained it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I have not only have I heard of, but I've actually heard someone say it. So yeah.
It's one that really gets me often. So ally fatigue is when someone who wants to join the sort of ally coalition is what I've been calling it.
Yeah.
And you want to like help make a change, and you know you start doing this work and you realize like how much you have to learn and educate and listen and get things wrong, and you get inundated with all this information, and allies, more often than not white allies, will be like, I can't do this, like it's so exhausting being an ally, there's too much information, I can't emotionally handle this. And for me, it's been having the conversation with people of like, I hear you, it is exhausting, it's very mentally and emotionally draining, but you and your privilege in this is that you feel like you can just walk away and stop being an ally. Say that again.
I said yes. I could just walk away, whereas you can't. You know.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we all have time to get a little better educated on things that are going on in society. I mean, I myself know that you can sit down and end up scrolling through Instagram for 45 minutes. Well, that is 45 minutes. Sorry, Instagram, because I know we're using your platform right now, but that is 45 mostly wasted minutes, unless your entire platform is nothing but like knowledge.
Yeah.
Mine is not. So I'm assuming most people function sort of like me. But yeah, that is a good one. And also, if you could talk a little bit about in there, sort of, I remember when we sat with Rev D and, she was like, it's so great that people, especially white allies, are walking around with signs and going to marches and doing those things. And it's wonderful. But what we really need is you to be doing those things at your kitchen table where we can't get. I always thought that always comes back to me. And I always think about a really good place to start as an ally is with your friend group and the people around you, and start changing minds that are closest to you, and holding signs is great, and posting is great, and bringing about awareness is great. But I do think that it's more beneficial to start at your own table and kind of work with your own church groups and your friend groups and things like that.
And that's it exactly. Like, as a marginalized person, I don't get to kind of like give up and take a break. And like you're saying, we need allies who are going to be able to like be at that Thanksgiving table with that family member who's problematic, or be at work and be like, we need to put in better practices to make sure that there's safeties in place for people of color and queer people and that sort of stuff. So that's exactly it. Is like, you have access to be like, people are commenting in the chat, like having the space and the access to like bring these things up and make that change happen, for sure. But then you and I also talked about the like feeling bad or feeling guilty part of allyship, or people who are on this journey of like, feeling bad or feeling guilty doesn't do anything for anyone. Like, you are obviously, like, feelings are valid, what you feel is valid, but also like, people who are marginalized aren't asking you to feel bad or feel guilty. And also, like, if you are in these positions, no one's asking you to feel bad or guilty. We're asking, like you said, to take the space that you have to actually make change. And like, don't sit in that feeling of feeling bad or feeling guilty. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to feel so driven to like move forward and say something in that next meeting when something happens that you see happen to a coworker. I want you to go and have that conversation with your family member. Like, feeling bad and feeling guilty, I think that's kind of like a trigger step of like, okay, I'm having this feeling, but then what do I do with that feeling next?
No, that's so good. I love that. Go and be empowered. That's really great.
Yeah. And then also an allyship on that other side of all this is like performative allyship. And we saw this a lot during Black Lives Matter, of like, people who were like, I want to be an ally, but I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to post the black square. And I was like, that doesn't really do anything. And so on the flip side, I saw people who were like,
black square. Yeah.
It's, listen, learning opportunities. But for people to be like, okay, I did this, it wasn't enough, or I want to do more. And going out and being like, I can read this book, I can go volunteer, I can go talk to activists and community leaders who are already doing this work. So don't just say you want to do a thing, do it, and then actually show it to people as well. But also, I think it's like doing it for yourself. Like, if you're an ally or an activist and you're doing it for like the attention or the clout, like, this isn't for you. I feel like allyship and activism is something literally that you're called to, or you feel drawn to, because you want the world to be better for everyone.
Yes.
And then I think the last part of all that is like, how can people always ask, like, how can they show up better or show up as an ally better? And I like to give the metaphor of like, when you get invited to dinner, like, if I invite you to dinner, I'm like, I'm making dinner. I don't expect you to show up with the main course. Like, bring a dessert or bring a beverage. That's the same thing with allyship and activism. Like, there are people who have already been doing this work, marginalized people who have done this work, but now we need allies to show up and take up space and create that access and talk in those rooms and, lift up those voices who are already doing that work. It's just that they don't have the same level of access to other people. And I know that like access and privilege are like really hot button terms these days, but I want to circle back to like, in some way, shape, or form, we all have some sort of access or privilege. Like I told you, I identify as a Black queer woman. So like, those are things that about me, there's systemic sort of roadblocks for me, but I'm also really privileged in the fact that like, I grew up in a 2-parent household. Both my parents had a job. They owned our house. English was my first language. I'm highly educated. Like, I've been able to have all these life experiences, but still, like, people are still going to judge me because of who I am.
Right.
So, yeah, I just think a lot of people get kind of stuck on that as well. And I'm like, this is a thing that we all have access for too. Okay. Wow, there's so much coming in. I like the scroll is distracting. Like, don't look.
It is, and it's like it's on my face, and so I'm like right there reading it. It is distracting, but there's a lot of good comments, some great questions that are
Yeah.
coming in. Oh,
Danielle's also jotting down questions because we decided that's how we're going to conquer this today. So the next sort of section I want to talk about was systemic racism. I briefly touched about in the beginning. I think right now we've been seeing the news cycle hasn't really been focusing on the murder of Black people by the police, but right now there's such an attack on like banned books and
yeah, yeah,
critical theory, especially critical race theory. The thing that gets me about book banning is that books are a way to tell stories and lived experiences, and when you ban books, specifically books that are focusing around race, LGBTQA plus issues, reproductive justice issues, like we are literally taking educational tools out of the hands of people who need those sort of resources. But this for me is just like, this is the new form of racism. And you and I talked about this the other day, like, like overt racism isn't something we're really seeing anymore. It's mostly systemic, sort of under the rug racism. And a lot of people make the notion that like book banning is what the Nazis did. And so to see this happening in the country is like literally mind blowing and like baffling to me. So
right. And when you were talking, I didn't realize this, but you said something about Texas being, we're the largest state, so we buy the most books. We have a sway on what textbooks are said and what's taught and what's bought throughout the country. It's kind of,
yeah, Texas, I think because we're so large and buy so many books, we literally get to decide what, I think like 50% of the rest of the country learns about. So
wow.
like, because I grew up in Connecticut, I had a totally different educational experiences than my friends who grew up in Texas. And like comparing notes, and like I learned about slavery, and there's this boat called the Amistad that like was really informed, like something I learned. And I was here talking to a friend who's like, I've never heard of this in my whole life. And I was like,
Right.
got it.
I
Totally.
because of documentaries and films, but I grew up in Louisiana and that is not something we were taught. So
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. And then the conversation on critical race theory too, like this theory has been around for 40 years. Like this isn't,
I that blows my mind because I wrote something about it on my Instagram and then just instantly had to delete hateful comment. Like just people lost their minds. And I'm willing to bet that if you put those people in a room and ask them to define it, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do that because when you actually do the research and look it up, it is not a terrifying concept at all, and it has been around for a long time. You and we were exchanging some. Is it a meme if it doesn't move, or a GIF? Like I'm so old. Like what's the thing I sent you? That's a meme, right?
a meme doesn't move, a GIF does. You sent me a meme.
I I sent her a meme, you guys. I'm old, but it was something. It was something about like if critical race bothers you so much as a white parent, um, is it because you're scared your children are going to identify with slave owners versus identifying with freedom fighting abolitionists? I mean, that one really, I thought about that for a while because I was like, no, I hope my friends would look at it and go, that's awful. And I identify with the people who were fighting against it, the abolitionists, and I'm going to take up where they left off. And it's just, it shouldn't scare people. We should be teaching the truth.
Yeah, but like you're saying, it's like, so the thing I pulled yesterday was that it's a social construct, and that the core idea is that race is a social construct and that racism is not merely the product of individual bias or prejudice, but also something embedded in legal system and policies, which right now there is an argument that teaching children, specifically white children, about historic events such as slavery, the civil rights movement, the Holocaust, etc., will make them think they are bad people. But if we don't learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. Also, this is centering the story of white people and the feelings, and once again, ignoring the pain that it was experienced by marginalized groups and people of color. So like you're saying, like the fact that you'll think that your children identifies more with the slave owner than the abolitionist makes you kind of look at yourself as a parent, I would think.
Right. Yes. You're like, wait, why would my kid feel terrible and feel like a slave owner? That's, well, the people, that just goes, the people having the argument about it are you know, it's part of the
Yeah.
problem. Um, yeah, that's just, you know, when you think about all these things and, you know, the Jewish community and what's happening there right now. I mean, we have to talk about these things. You and I were sharing, I think we both were like, oh my gosh, did you see the thing on the internet that Anne Frank and Martin Luther King were born in the same year? Or because, you know, all the photographs are black and white. Everything looks like it happened so long ago, and it really didn't. You know, it really did not. It would have been like 93 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They could still be very much alive.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I said to you yesterday. Like
Yeah.
like all the civil rights photos are in black and white to make you think that it wasn't only 50 years ago, like 60, 65. Like my parents were born that year. Like it's not
Right.
that.
My parents were born in the 50s. I mean, they were teenagers during that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like
Conversations. I mean, but that's why these conversations are important. It's you know, people are like, "Oh, we're so," you know, when you hear these people go on and on like, "We're past that. It's so far. That's behind us." I'm like, "No, it's not." It's not.
well, I was reading something last night too of like because critical race theory is being like banned
Yeah.
all of every month, like there's nothing being taught this month about anything. Like someone just said Ruby Bridges. I'm like, the first black girl to like go to an all-white school, like that was not that long ago.
Right.
And then I saw that meme too of like, if a black child can have to live through that, then your white children can learn about it, right? Like it's that thing
Of
of
course.
like to center that again of like, we as black people and people of color and marginalized people in this country have gone through so much, and it's like we have to talk about it if we're going to move forward. But so many people now are like, it's going to just lead to riots and uprisings and all these things, and it's like the interesting thing is like all the people of color know about this. Like we're not the ones who need to learn about it. So what does that also say about our country, that you think the people who are now having to quote learn about it are going to react in this way?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think another sort of thing people always ask is like, where do I go from here? And how do I get more involved? What are my next steps? And I'm like, I always ask myself whenever I do any sort of activism, like, why am I on this journey? And what do I want my legacy to be in this journey of activism? And for me, I'm always like, if I can go and talk to a group of people, and that means that one or two minds can be changed, or that like in 5 years from now another ally doesn't or activist doesn't have to have the same conversation, that's really big for me. So I always tell people like to know your why, and then also ask yourself like, when was the last time you acted as an ally? Like was there something that happened that sort of triggered this? Did you see a microaggression that you wanted to like act on but didn't know how to, and now you're like kicking yourself for not speaking up? How do you show up as an activist in your role? That's parent, community member, employee. Like there's so many options and opportunities to just speak up in a way that is safe for you and safe for that person. Like I tell people, if you're only an ally when people can see you do it, then we also need to check that. Like
Right.
many that like things have happened to me and friends have spoken up on my behalf and they told me later, I had no idea. But I think that's the thing too. Like, how do you show up when no one else is looking or no one else is watching? Um, and then yeah, like learning like how you're going to move past your stumbling blocks, rethinking things like we've been talking about, like why does this trigger you in this way? How are you going to move forward? And then also like building stronger relationships, like you and I talking about this stuff. Every time something political or something in the news happens, I feel like you and I are just like always texting about it.
Yeah.
And then yeah, what are your steps from here? Like I feel like there's so many things that people can be involved with and care about, and I know it can be overwhelming. I know that it can be, you don't really know where to start, and I was like, just start like anywhere. Like there's so many nonprofits in the world that I know would like love a volunteer or someone to like just go on and like read what they're doing. And if you're not sure where to start, like we all have Google, we all have the internet, and just be like type in like racial justice work and then whatever city you live in. Like it's that simple, and something will come up. And yeah, those are my talking points that I have for this evening.
Someone will. I mean, don't you think someone like, you know, that part is always a little bit scary, and a lot of times it happens organically. You meet people like you and I met, or You know, I did some work with Creative Action, and I met them through another friend. And like, you know, you just, if you are talking, if you're walking the walk and talking about it, it's going to come into your life as well. I mean, if you're having those conversations with people that you want to get involved, it will come into your life. But also Google. And there are so many organizations out there that need help. No one is going to say no to you. You will get tasked with some sort of a job if you ask for it and you go there with good intentions, I think. And yeah, Google's a great resource for that. We'll help you. You
Truly.
I'll Google for you. How about that? We do have some questions. I mean, do you?
I'm good with question. We got so many before we started too. I had posted that like question block too. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's give you an. Let's do an easy one.
Okay.
Very easy actually, but
Okay.
I managing information overload was a question someone just wrote. Managing information overload, question mark. And I'm not sure exactly what that if what do you think it means, Brie? I mean, a lot of things come in, obviously,
Yeah.
past couple years, and maybe that goes back to someone doesn't know where to start. Or
For me, I used to watch the news all day, and
yeah,
it was just my
20,
brain like, yeah, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sad, I'm so anxious. So for me, what I do now is like, one, I get news from sources I trust, like a lot of local stuff in Austin that I love. But then like national news, I'm a very big NPR nerd.
yeah,
And
same.
they have a daily podcast called Up First, and it's like 10 minutes. It's a podcast. It's every morning. And it just gives like little like snippets of the news. And for me, that's way more digestible than just like having the news on all day on a loop. Um,
Yeah,
and also like I follow people on Instagram, like different orgs and people who I really admire who do this sort of work. And I get it from them because I'm like, I trust them. I know they're going to tell me the things I need to know and how to get involved and where to volunteer and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's like getting reputable sources, finding a way to absorb it in a way that doesn't cause me anxiety or stress. And then taking whenever I do have anxiety and stress, I'm like, okay, what can I do with this feeling to make an impact for sure?
yeah, I think that's really important. I think a lot of us got kind of sucked into that news cycle with, you know, all the racial injustice that was happening and COVID. And we were all just like, oh my gosh, we better stay glued to the TV. Otherwise we're going to miss something and we're not going to know. And, you know, but I don't think it's helpful. I agree with you. I think we have to be careful and not just overload our minds like that. Someone else asked, do you think gerrymandering can be brought under control? And how can we help? Um, yeah, that's a big one.
It's a big one. Um, I think so. For those of you who don't know, I'm very into politics. I have been since I was 10. Like it's,
Extremely. We're trying to get her to run for something here in Austin.
ugh.
I suggested mayor.
We'll circle back at a later date of me running. But I do think it can be changed. I think it's exactly this, like having this conversation, challenging the status quo. Like we right now in Austin, and I believe in Texas as a whole, we're redrawing districts,
Yep.
and that goes back into who we elect. So everything is very connected, right? Like who you elect into office will work for you. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like every person who is a public official works for you. You have every right to call your congressperson, to call your mayor, to call your council person. Like you have, someone just said brief for mayor. You have the right to call those people and hold them accountable, right? Like I,
It's easy now to find the number. I remember, I mean, back when I was in my 20s, I had no idea how to do that. I mean, nobody even thought about that. No one talked about it. It wasn't like, well, we didn't have Instagram, and you definitely didn't have people like flashing up the numbers. I mean, now, if you want to find out your Texas Congress, Utah, anybody, I mean, you're only Google away, and you can probably find it on Instagram. There's probably a direct link to call numbers. And I would say that could be a way to show up as an ally as well,
Yeah.
is to get involved politically.
Voting is the number one way to show up. Someone just said, how do you find locally? If you literally Google your address or your zip code, it'll bring up everything you know. And I think that's on iamavoter.org, I believe,
Yeah.
will do for you. And it'll tell you your council district, your mayor, your congressional person, your senator, and it'll spit back out their information on how to contact them.
Yeah.
Another thing for senator is that you can now email them too. Like a lot of stuff was happening with the Texas Ledge, and you can just literally send an email to the person and they have to respond. It might be an automatic response, but they have to technically respond to you, so you'll know your email got it there. So
Yes.
so yeah, I think gerrymandering will be figured out, because I think so many people are paying attention to voter suppression, and those two go hand in hand.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there such a thing as trying too hard? Someone said that once to me recently.
I don't think so, but I want to answer this very carefully. There's two parts to this. Someone judging what you're doing has more to do with them than you. So don't stop doing what you're doing. What I would say is to take a look at like why you are doing quote too much. And it might not even be too much or be too hard. It's just like maybe you're doing so much and it's making them look at themselves and they're judging themselves. But I think if you're showing up as an ally who's literally there to listen and learn, and literally listen and learn, like I think you and I do this really well. Like we'll call and have a conversation about things. Like just tell me everything. I just want to listen and hear your perspective.
Yeah.
And I think so many people, a lot of my friends do that now. Like they're like, "Hi, I love you. I know you do this work full time. Would you just please explain this to me, or give this to me in a way that's not going to make me freak out?" And there are people in your life who will want to do that. Like I love nothing more than sitting and having a conversation with people about this. But I feel like the more people who know and get involved will take that and like take that to someone else and do a thing about it. So I don't think there's anything as trying too hard. I just think that your intention needs to match your outcome or what you're trying to do with trying too hard in the impact you're trying to have.
What can I do from Germany to support the BLM movement in the USA? And we do have a lot of people on here. I see Iran. I see a lot of
all over.
Yeah, everywhere.
I
would say as well as there we go. Yeah, everywhere. And BLM isn't just in the United States, is it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay.
No. This question that just popped up, I really want to get to. Do you think changes such as health disparities among race are long-term fixes? That's just no. So yeah, BLM is everywhere. We saw this in 2020. I actually just talked to a friend from Sweden. Yeah,
Sweden. Yes.
Sweden or Scotland, one of the two. I can't remember. I can't today. I'm tired. But we were talking about how impactful BLM even was over there. Like you said, we're all in the house. We're all getting this sort of inundation of the news. But I feel like anywhere that there are people of color where you live, this is an issue that is happening for them.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like it's just, again, looking at the systems in place. Like for us, we have the school to prison pipeline. We have really high incarceration rates for Black people. We have Black mothers dying in childbirth at an alarmingly higher rate than white mothers. Like there's so many things that happen that I think we just have to sit and look at them and not be afraid to look at them. Like so many people are afraid to, like we're saying, feel bad or feel guilty or feel uncomfortable. I'm like, no, sit in that, because it's going to cause you to like stand up and say something. And so, yeah, I just feel like it's everywhere. I feel like there's chances for you to get involved. And yeah.
What do you think? I mean, so if someone's like, oh, I want to get involved and I live in Germany, maybe they Google some of the things that you just said, some of the problems that are within the Black community in their country. And you Google those, maybe one one really hits you? Like there's got to be something that sort of jumps out where you're like, this is a cause I can get behind, and then, you know, narrow your focus and work there to start, you know, so it doesn't seem so overwhelming.
Yeah, sorry, this question just came in and I want to talk about
Yeah, yeah.
it. Do you think that pushing to have independent candidates in the debates would help make a difference in terms of getting the right people in power to help those issues? I think it's a catch-22, specifically living here in the States, because it's very much like Democrats or Republicans, and a lot of money is funneled only to the two-party system. I think right now there's so many new candidates and people from different life experiences that are running, and there's so many nonprofits I know who are popping up to help those. Like She Should Run is one.
Right.
Another mine that I can't think of the org of now, but they're really big on like supporting first-time folks who are younger who are running for office. There's another org that supports all LGBTQA plus folks who run for office. So I think it's less about how the person who's running, what ticket they pick, if it's Republican or Democrat. I just think it's how are we helping to support them. I think because it's been a two-party system and the way money works, and there's also so many things that go into running for office. Like I know here in Texas, like if you're running for Justice of the Peace in Austin, the only person you have to technically have on staff is a treasurer. But if you're running for like city council or like mayor, you could only donate to that person a certain amount of times or a certain amount of money. Like there's all these different things in place. So we constantly see people who are wealthy running for office and winning because they can afford to, because running for office is a thing that is just, it's really much tied to wealth.
Yes. Let's see. Was there a healthcare question?
There was, and I have to scroll back to it. It was essentially something like, do we think that the healthcare system in regards to like the Black experience will change? That's a really good question. I was doing a live with Charlie Capon the other day. We were talking about Black people and healthcare and how cancer is really running prevalent in the Black community, but it's the healthcare system, period. Like America needs a better healthcare system. Like
Right.
if you have a job or you can't afford it out of pocket, then you don't have health insurance. And it's such a privilege to have health insurance, and it's such a cost to have it. But we also see a lot of people, specifically during COVID, we saw this, like so many Black and brown people who had to go to work or they wouldn't be able to afford life. And the same goes for
Right.
healthcare. Like it's a lot of low-income folks who can't afford healthcare because they're not full-time or they're working a couple part-time jobs. So I think, again, it all goes back to politics, and I hate to say it, but we have to fight for this. Like if we had universal healthcare in the States, we would have everyone would be healthier. Life would just be simpler. Like there's just all these things that like healthcare, if you don't have healthcare, so many other things kind of fall out of line.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of healthcare, and not only healthcare but prescriptions, is astronomical, and so a lot of people can't afford the meds that they're even prescribed because of the cost of it all.
Someone is asking a question. It's the lip filler surgeon recommendations. No, I don't have any of that right now. People. And so someone asked a question that said, what is the Black experience? I hear that term a lot.
It's a very interesting question. So for me, I like to start out with saying like being a marginalized person I'm not a monolith. It's like my Black experience would be different than someone else's Black experience.
Right.
But overall, I would say like the only example I can think of is, you know, whenever we do see another Black person killed by the police, it is such a close to home experience because of what this country has done. And I want to say that in the same breath being like, I'm very lucky to live in America. I have a lot of access here. I can do all these things, blah, blah, blah. but also like the James Baldwin quote says like I can love America and still be judgmental of it. And so as a Black,
Of course.
whenever I see a Black person murdered by the police, it really basically takes my breath away even now, because it is something that could happen to any of us. And I think because so many of us see ourselves in that, or our family member in that, like, so that's like the hardship of the Black experience. But then also like the joy of the Black experience is like we have so many similarities, and being able to feel that sort of communal space of like overcoming in the face of adversity, and being able to do so many things in spite of people not believing that we could, and still being able to find happiness when the world kind of doesn't give us space to do that. So it's kind of the duality.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. We'll go back to these. Ooh, this one is older generations and parents who are racist and trying to educate them. I mean, there's a civil discourse conversation. We all have people in our family, I think, across the board, especially like some of the older folks who probably in their day had the same complaints about, you know, their parents, and we tend to grow as a society. But yeah, I think that how would you suggest talking to older generations, because you know they are stuck in their ways. So
I always tell people, and I think you know this about me, I don't argue with people. I don't have the energy for it. So if you want to come in and actually have a discussion with me, great. We'll do it all day. We'll both be super respectful. I don't have to change your mind. You don't have to change my mind. We're just going to have this conversation. So it's not
perfect.
like, protect your peace. There are just some people who are going to want to argue and be combative. You do not have to, quote, fall into that space with them and, you know, come back another day or hand them a book or what have you. I think for the parents to like actually want to learn, I think it's a lot of patience. I was just talking to my uncle, who's maybe in his 60s, about the use of pronouns and how important that is and why it's important. He's like, listen, I don't, like, we're from different times. Like, I get it. We'll talk about it. We'll take it slow. So I think it's patience and perspective. You and I were joking about this yesterday, but like I grew up with the internet since I was like 10. Like, so
Yeah.
I can do all these things and figure all these things out. So I think that younger generation just has so much access. And I think about like just giving older people that access. So like, here's something you can watch that I think you might understand. And it might be a movie, it might be a show, it might be a book. Like, there's just so many resources out there that you can just be like, whenever you are finished with this, come and find me so we can have a conversation. You
Yeah,
don't have
that's
to
nice.
do heavy of a lift of like, this exists already and I would love to discuss it with you when you're ready, later day. Um, and then also like, one of the things my grandma used to say to me is like, you are the company you keep. And so I always like to kind of turn that around of like, don't you want to be in better company? Don't you want to be better company? And so knowing how to like give them tools to talk about it. Cause I read somewhere one day, like, no one wakes up wanting to be an asshole. Like, they're
Right.
typically trying to do better. So I think it's just like giving tools, giving access, and also like applauding them if they are coming from a place of like wanting to learn. Like, thank you for like coming to me. Like, I know it's not easy to like ask me for these sort of things. So yeah.
Yeah, I think always listening to people, and we're so quick now to like jump on people. I mean, you see it on social media. It's like somebody says something and you want to instantly find what's wrong, rip it apart. And if that person's wrong, you are just giving them ammunition to dislike you and disagree, and you are meeting them with that combative, angry, you can't necessarily always, you can't do that. It just doesn't work. We've learned it over and over again. No one wants to talk to someone who's already put up you know the face in the hand. They're so angry, and it's just, I have it with members in my family, and we have agreed to just not discuss it. um, and I don't think that that's helpful. I'm working on that. They're like distant
Mm.
family members, but it is like, not talking about is really not an option. So, and I'm guilty of it too. We have to figure out a way to just sit down, be calm, and be able to discuss things.
There's a question here that I want to talk about because I feel like it's really. Someone asked, do you agree with the quote ACAB, so all cops are bad, saying, as a Black person, I struggle supporting it because while I do think there's a major crack in the way POC are handled by cops, I wonder if saying ACAB is helpful. It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's very, I guess, like, think how I want to answer this. I think because the history of police, for those of you who don't know, is that cops were originally invented, air quotes, to catch runaway slaves. That's how policing started. I think over time, give me grace here, the system has been working to do what it's supposed to do. That being said, I think as times have shifted and we've grown as a society, I think we need to take a look at how much we're investing in the system of policing. Now, I'm not saying that cops aren't needed. I'm saying that we need to look at what we're using police for. Yes. And I think that after the last year here in Austin, we reallocated funds, or for people who are okay with hearing the word, we defunded the police. So we took.
All still okay. Bree and I are still here. We made it through. Everybody's fine.
So we took funds out of the police budget and we reallocated them into more ambulances in the city. We now added a fourth option to 911 so people can call for mental health emergencies and have a therapist or mental health professional go versus the police going automatically. So it's saving more lives and having more space for conversation. And so, yeah, I'm just saying, like, I think obviously we know police are there to keep us safe, but also sometimes police show up and it's not safe for everyone.
Right.
So yeah, I just think it's all like, it's a very nuanced conversation of like, they're not all bad. We know not all cops are bad, but there are, like we've talked about, like the quote bad apples or the one spoils the bunch and all that stuff. But if the system in place is making it so easy for these bad ones to be noted, then I think we need to look at what the system in place have and been able to do.
I think that's a great answer. And I think that if you asked the good apples in the police force, they would agree that they don't want to go to certain calls. They are not qualified to be at certain calls. You know, I know that even I've had a friend that was a police officer and was called to a suicide once, and it was not. He said, I should not have been there, you know, and the person was lost, you know, and they're trained in that, but it's like a little bit of their training. It's not, you know, people spend their whole lives in order just to talk one person off the ledge. You know, that is not something you just take a little 15-minute course in and then you're qualified to do it. So I think that that's such a good answer. And let's see. Yeah. A former police officer greatly appreciates your answer, Bree. So there you go.
Thank you. So I keep seeing the like book recommendation question come up. There are 4 books that I swear by right now. So the first one is Me and White Supremacy by Layla Syed, and I'll post these to my story when we're done with this chat. I'll post it in the notes when I post it too. So yeah, Me and White Supremacy by Layla Syed. I have a problem with the book White Fragility because it's written by a white woman. All these books I'm about to share with you are written by Black women. Let me start with that. So Me and White Supremacy by Layla Syed. I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown. Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. And Somebody's Daughter, a memoir by Ashley C. Ford.
Okay.
Those are my. I'm trying to make sure we get to all of them. Someone asked, like, what are some ways to get started? I think we've answered this, but like, literally, like we said, Google, there's always something around you. Someone said in their small town, if you live near a bigger city, like we're really lucky, and like here in Austin, there's like 2 or smaller cities north of us, so a lot of people will come in and do work that way. So if you are able to like get to a larger city, that's an option for you. I also think because like you can do volunteer work from your home now, like it might be calling people on the phone, registering voters. I feel like is the easiest like volunteer project you can do, because a lot of them are like you can sign up to like do text banks or phone banks, sending out voter registration cards. Like there's just so many different ways to get involved. So it doesn't matter how large or small your town is, you can do something. I promise.
How do you juggle life and stay positive and motivated? And I will say you are so positive and motivated.
I really asked this question. I felt it. I was like, it's coming. For me, I'm really good about unplugging. I will turn off my phone or put it in another room and go and watch. We were talking about this. I'll go watch One Tree Hill for like the 7th billionth time. Or Harry Potter. Like those are my like top 2 go-to. I'm like, I need my brain to just shut off, experience joy, and I don't have to like think about it. I know it's gonna happen. It's fine. I also lean on my friends. This year, I'm trying to like be better about letting people help me and asking for help, which is really big for me because I don't do it. You know me. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine all the time. I'm fine. But this year, I'm like trying to do better. And if you have friends who want to help you or you need help, don't feel like you can't reach out. Like the whole like strong women trope, I'm like, let that go.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a new therapist, which is really exciting. I'm trying to get back into therapy. I journal a lot. I work out. I like to cook. I like to read. So that's how I like stay positive and motivated. Like I just find things that like make me happy. But then also this next generation of activists that are coming up, like the kids are okay. Like
Yeah.
they all know what they're doing. We don't really need to lead them. They will tell us what they need. And just listen to them. I feel like as adults, we feel like we have to constantly pick their battles or like fight for them or like put them in little bubbles. Like these kids are okay. They know what they need. Believe them, listen to them, give them space. And so being able to like work with so many younger activists and be like, oh my God, you're fine. Like you need someone to just like give you, like right now I've been helping with a lot of speech writing and like public speaking training. But other than that, I'm like, you got this. Like just speak from your heart. You know what you want. You know what you need. Someone said, yeah, get rid of the negative people. Every year on my birthday, I audit the people in my life. Like, are these people who I want to bring into my next year of life with me? And so that's a really good way to like stay positive and motivated. Again, you're the company you keep. So here we are.
A lot of people are like listening to this and they're like, oh shoot, I haven't talked to Brie in a year. That was right around her birthday. I was
okay.
audited.
I want everyone to do well, but me doing well means like making some space.
I'm gonna hold my breath every year on my birthday until I get a text from you that says happy birthday.
Oh my gosh, stop.
I'm still in.
Stop. No, you're a for lifer. Listen, we have the same birthday. We have to be friends forever.
We are. Okay. I want to end this nicely so we don't get cut off and we're like frozen. I adore you. This was really fun, and we should do it again.
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's do it again. We'll do this until like someone decides we should have a TV show together.
I'm ready.
We can.
You know my feelings. I'm ready. I'm so ready.
I know, but you're so busy being mayor. You're gonna forget about me.
Hasn't happened yet. Anyway, thank you for having this convo with me. Thank you all for being here.
Yes.
If people have been asked, like, how can we support you? Like, literally drop me a message. If you click the link in my bio, there's like all the stuff to get in contact with me. But yeah, I could talk about this forever. This is why it's my job. I just really want us all to do better and have a better life. And yeah, and then like I said, I'm going to make sure we put this on our feed so people can watch it at their leisure.
Okay, yes, we can talk about how to do that after we get off, because I don't know how to do that. But
okay, I will send you the step by step. But yes, thank you everyone. You're the best. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Bye.